Check, 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 check. All right. So let's go ahead and hop into Ableton 12. So this is Ableton 12. You are going to have a MIDI track, which is like an instrument track where you can play on, right? And then you're going to have a vocal track where you can record on. Now, you just arm it by the red, and now input is coming through. Now, you could tell there's a little latency. So I'm going to turn that off just so you have one voice. If you hit Command, comma, that brings up your preferences. You can also go to File, Live, right? And go to Settings. And that'll bring it up as well. Now, what is all of this? Display and input, I don't know. You can zoom in and out, whatever. All of this is just like customizable. Themes and colors, customizable. Audio is important. My input is my universal audio sound card. A lot of you to start out might have Scarlett or other interfaces, audio sound card interface, same thing. You're going to want to make sure that when that's set up correctly, that the input is that, right? Because that's where your mic's going to be plugged into, and your output is going to be to your speakers or wherever you particularly want it to go. If you're streaming or something, maybe somewhere else. But anyways, it's your sound card. Okay. Now you have your in and out sample rate. I don't know. I usually keep it at 48. Doesn't really matter if you're this early into the game and you're watching this video, whether you're 41 or 48, it doesn't matter. If you go up here, that's just ridiculous for what you're trying to do, which is learn Ableton. I have this high quality set. I don't even know why, whatever, buffer size. So this is where you get your latency issues. So keep it at 128 if you're recording stuff, guitars, this, or whatever it is. I'm streaming right now, so it's also taking up a little bit of latency, but at the end of the day, 128 should be fine. If you start going to 2048 or 1024, that's for like mixing and mastering and stuff like that, when you have a lot of CPU load. Now, what is CPU load? It'll show it up here, if you're following my cursor, on the upper corner, where it's like 3 to 4% hovering right there. That is the CPU load. So we're not using a lot of CPU, which therefore we're able to get away with recording. Now just listen, check, check. You can hear that there's a little bit of a delay. Well, if I go up here, check, check. There's a huge delay. So there you go. That's basically delay compensation right there for you. I'm going to turn off. There we go. Okay. So back to the preferences. Again, you can get that by just going up to Live and Settings. I guess it's Settings, not Preferences. That's Logic, but either way, Settings, Audio. So yeah, make sure your input and your output configuration for your audio input device is set. So I have a really big audio input device with 16 channels, plus I daisy changed it to something else that has even more channels. So all of these are yellow that I'm using. Same with the outputs. I'm actually only going up to 12 for my outputs. Sometimes I use more, sometimes not. Just depends. But you at least want for yours, if you have like a Scarlett or something, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5, 6, 7, 8 if you have a bigger Scarlett with like, it's just how many input channels. Do you have like a microphone, a second microphone, an instrument, and maybe another instrument? So you would want 1 through 4. But yeah, 1 through 6 is pretty safe. Now, going to link, tempo, and MIDI. Honestly, good luck with all this. Just kind of make sure that your MIDI port is working. Depending what you have, you might have a really extensive setup you want to put together. I don't use all of that stuff. I just have one Arturia MIDI keyboard, so it's just this. I don't really play around here too much. Now, file folder, that's pretty important. This is where you're gonna like basically set your browser of like where your temporary folder things are gonna go. Are you going to create a sound content analysis? That, I mean, it's still kind of honestly just like data handling, right? So this stuff is not really 100% for you at the moment, though I do recommend that you guys put all of your saved projects, and when you start a project, into a folder and label it so you know where things are. And I will make a whole separate video on that. Library content of where your user library goes, where your folder packs go. Plugins, this is where you will browse to find where all your third-party VST plugins are, VS2, VST3. AU isn't really the best for Ableton, but sometimes I break the rules and use them anyways because the VST3 won't show up or something like that. You could do things like multiple plugin windows, turn that on. That's kind of cool. So if you have like a distortion over here and like a synth over here, you could see them both at the same time rather than just one at a time. Record, warp, and launch is important because you have your, what's your file type? Are you going to record into a WAV or AIFF? I suggest WAV. Bit depth, I keep it to 24. Count in for your click track, maybe 1 bar, whatever you want. Arm, solo, whatever. Clip update rate, I don't know. Record sessions automation, armed tracks, warps and fades. I play with this depending on what I'm doing. If I'm doing a lot of mixing and bringing in stems, it's warped loop, and the auto warp long samples is off, and the default warp mode's complex. Create fades, no. If I'm recording a lot, I might turn on create fades no matter what. If I'm just producing some stuff, maybe I'll turn on auto warp long samples so that my loops come in a little bit more synced up and to the BPM of the track. We'll talk about BPM in a second. So yeah, I don't really mess around with launch too much. I guess I keep it at trigger, in the global, quantization, whatever I'm actually at. And then of course you have license and updates. So that's not something you really check around too much unless you want to turn off your updates. I keep them on because I like having new stuff, and some people say, oh, don't do that because if your OSX is old or new, or it might mess things up. I just go with the flow at this point. If some plugins don't work anymore, I'd rather be up to date than have to do a big update later. So if I have to lose access to one plugin or something because of an update, fine, I'll find an alternative solution to that plugin. Distortions, EQs, all of it. There are some really cool things out there by third parties. There's even some really cool stuff in here. But at the end of the day, you can really make your own plugin chains as well. So that is the settings. We just went through all the settings. And again, you're going to really pay attention to audio, okay? That's where you want to make sure your interface is working, your audio input and output, and your buffer size is at 128 if you're recording, or higher if you're doing high intense CPU mixing and mastering. So let's look at the main view. There's two views. If you go to this upper corner, you can go to this view. Nobody uses this view that makes and produces music anymore. I'm sorry. Some people do, not my friends. So you have an instrument track, right? So let's go to our instruments. Maybe I'll just explain a little bit of this over here. All of this collections is just like customizable stuff, and all of this, honestly, it's new to Ableton. I don't really love it. I love the old school way of just focusing a little bit more on just what you have to work with, which is your library and the names of stuff. So library, all sounds, drums, instruments, audio effects racks, MIDI, modulators, Max for Live, plugins. These are your third-party plugins, like all of your native instruments or your waves and stuff like that. The audio effects are what comes stock in Ableton, right? So I strongly do recommend. There's a lot of really good music being made these days, and a lot of the younger kids are deciding to only use instruments that come with Ableton or Logic or something, like whether it be your operator or synths and stuff like that, and audio effects like the EQs built inside, just because over the years, if you get good advice, you start getting third-party stuff and it's a headache to keep up to date with all of it, and it costs a lot of money, or you're ripping it from piracy and then you lose it at one point because of an update. It's just a mess. So yeah, obviously I have a ton of plugins and I've paid for all of them, and I might use some of these here and there, but for the most part I am trying to compose and record with just using the built-in audio effects and instruments these days. You have grooves and stuff, so you can put some swing in. We'll talk about that later. It's not super important. If you have swing, record it. If you're playing guitar, put some swing into it. If you're doing vocals, put some swing into it. If you're doing drums, record it. Whatever. I don't know. Then you have like kind of like all of your library stuff. So I have music production libraries with just so many sample packs I've bought in over the years. And I did actually take a few of these. I think like you could probably see like, yeah, this Oliver pack, and then I right click and I made it purple for my samples. And that's utilizing a little bit of, so I can go to my samples really quickly up here. And there you go. There's the Oliver pack. So I can just navigate really quickly by doing some stuff. I put my favorite plugins for mixing all right here. Vocal stuff, auto tunes, delays, reverbs that I really like, some really good EQs right here, plugins from third party like Contact, Phase Plant, Reactor, Serum, Spire, all of that goes in here. So I can just easily go places. But you know, if I don't want to just go right here, sometimes I will just go to plugins and maybe I'll type in what I'm looking for, Serum, and then I'll grab Serum. And it's important since there's four serums here. Serum Effects is not the synth. These are all the synth. Now you have the AU, the VST, and the VST3. I never can actually tell if the VST3 is this one or this one. I just have no idea at this point. Or if it's the VST2. I just stay away from the AUs and I go with one of the VSTs. So yeah, let's talk about a default piano track or something. So here you go. This right here on the far right, if you're following my cursor, track 1, the little red over here goes ahead and arms it so you can play something. Turn it off, play on your keyboard, nothing happens. Okay, now also, alternatively, you can play on your actual keyboard, which is your letter keyboard, if this yellow thing up here is on. If it's not, then you can't play anything. And then all of a sudden I'm hitting S and it goes to solo. So let's turn that back on. Now I can actually play the keyboard on my numeric keyboard rather than my piano roll. So I like to keep that on just in case I want to just not play any piano and I just want to audition things by hitting S or A. Now all of this gets interesting. You know, you have this turns on and off the track. So you can also obviously you can grab a space like this. You hit Shift Command M and that will go ahead and give you a piano roll. So what you could do at this point is enter in some notes. I'm going to play right here a C minor, and I'm going to hold that down on my keyboard, and I'm going to go ahead and click down here in the piano roll. I'm going to put it right in the beginning, click it, and hit the right arrow. There we go. That's one way. The other way to do it is literally just double click, put it in, and maybe I always like to do Command Copy V, move it up, Command Copy V, move it up to a chord. Right? Now, this yellow up here turns it on and off. On, off. Cool. Volume. Now, you keep it in all ins usually, unless you're doing some complex routing. All ins, and then don't worry about your channels. Auto, I believe, versus off. Off just will turn off the MIDI input, right? So at least where you can't hear it. This is whether or not you can hear things. Auto, you can hear things. In means you're totally inputting something and you can hear it. I like to keep it on auto. Now, where is it going? Is it going externally outside of your DAW into your speakers, or is it going to your main, which is this main master track down here? Usually you want it going to the main, okay? So that's pretty much everything that's important in my opinion for a MIDI track. Obviously you're going to want to probably finish out a chord progression, write something with actual substance, you know, I don't know, put in some more chords. Whatever, we'll just do a 3-chord thing right now, right? Cool, maybe you invert one. whatever you decide to do, we'll keep it really simple right now. Now let's go into the vocal track or your guitar track, whatever you want to call this. If this is a guitar and you're going to mic up a guitar, great. If you're going to do an input with your guitar for electric guitar or something else, then great, you put that in. We're going to do a vocal track right now, so I'm going to call it Vocals. Again, this is your on and off, the yellow right here. This is allowing you to actually audition and record in auto. If you turn it off, then you can't hear anymore. Some people do like to take an ear off and just do it like this, especially when you have a lot of latency in your project. That gets a little bit more advanced, but like you can still record things in and just like tinker with it and maybe drag it over if there was too much latency. That's for like changing lyrics later in the game or like adding stuff way later when in the middle of the mix or something. Normally, if you're not having any latency, you just turn it on auto and now you can actually hear what's coming in. These little things right here are your sends. There's reverb, no reverb, reverb, no reverb, delay, no delay, delay. Now notice I can turn it off, right? Reverb, turn it off down here. These are your reverb and delays. You can add more. Option Command Track adds more of these and you can start loading it up with effects. We'll deal with that later. This is super beginner. You probably just want to do reverb and delay at the very most. And then turn these back down to a negative infinity. If you don't want anything, we'll put a little bit of reverb on right now. Now, external in is important because that's your external sound card in. And then for me, my microphone is on input 3. Maybe if I were doing guitar, my guitar input is actually 1 for my electric guitar, but we're just doing vocals, so it's my microphone's plugged into the 3rd input. There you go. Again, I want to actually hear myself, so I'm going to do auto instead of off. I never really do in, to be honest, unless I'm doing some like vocoder routing or something like that. We're not doing that. Auto. And of course, I want it to go to the main master down here, not externally out or anywhere else. I want to go into the main. All of that, you're pretty much ready to go, and you can sing or something over this. We're singing over this. Cool. Little things you could do in here and dive into is to say you want to extend this a little bit more. I usually just click it, hit Command D, and that duplicates the track. If you hit Command Z, that takes everything we just did away. If you want to actually, for some reason, keep this vocal going and you want to duplicate all this, you hit Shift Command D, and that duplicates basically the time of everything. You go inside here, you start having all these other parameters, you know, play with it a little bit. I'm not going to go, it takes years to learn every little thing about this, but the more you tinker with it, the more you're gonna, you know, come up with things like, so you can start just putting in some more notes. We're singing over this. Cool. And then this little thing I'm dragging back is the loop. So turn that off and then it'll keep going. You put it on, it'll loop, right? So I think we'll just cut it right there for right now. I mean, I could talk about up here a little bit more maybe actually. So like here's your BPM. So obviously that's 170 BPM. These little guys right up here, turn it on to hear the metronome. We're singing over this. Now you can take it down and make it really slow if you want. We're singing over this. You can hear the vocal quality got way, way worse, so you're going to maybe want to re-record that. We're singing over this. Right? We're singing over this. Then you say, oh, I want to speed it back up again to 170. Now it's going to sound wonky maybe. We're singing over this. So you might re-record it again. We're singing over this. We're singing over this. We're singing over this. Now, this is the last and most important thing I'm going to talk about right now, because yeah, you can change the tempo. You could, you know, even change it to 6/8 timing or something like that if you're doing some sort of like ballad. I like to keep it at 4/4. Well, actually, no, I like to do whatever I want, but right now we're going to keep it 4/4. I'm going to turn this on and off the metronome whenever I want. I don't really pay attention to the key. I just know it because music theory is important. Your playback, spacebar, whatever. Like, that's all stuff that you got to figure out on your own. We're singing over this. Now, this little thing zooms in, right? Now, you go in here, especially if you're recording yourself and you're a vocalist or whatever. Listen. We're singing over this. You can hear the clicks. So take time and actually edit that. Take that out. Now, what I do, if I hover over this, it'll go snap to the grid, but if I hold Command down, it'll let me kind of slip grid, right? So I'll go right up to the breath. I'll take that because I might want to keep the breath. We're singing over this. You can even hear here. We're singing this. Maybe take out the click you hear there. This. We're singing over this. And again, maybe I don't want the breath, so I'm going to grab this. I'm going to hit Command. I'm going to drag it until it's gone. We're singing over this. Now it's a ballady track already, in my opinion, so like I'm going to keep the breath. We're singing over this. Right? Okay, so let's go ahead and add an instrument track to put in some drums. So an instrument track, I'm going to do Shift Command T. That gives me an instrument track. I'm going to take off all of this. I've customized it to have the pitch, monitor, and tune already there. But I'm going to go into my drums and I'm going to find a kit that I might want to use. Maybe the 505 core kit. Right, I'll drag that in. And then I'm just going to want some sort of like kick drum right now. So I'm going to go down here to the bass. And I'm just going to go ahead and take this, Command D, duplicate it all the way across. There's my boring little drums. We're singing over this. Now to make it cooler, I'll go into audio effects and I'll go ahead and I'll take an auto filter maybe, and I'll just have it really, really pulsing low. We're singing over this. And there's no difference between, obviously with your sound selection there is, but like instead of doing the drum machine or something, like you can just literally do a track, which is Command T to build a new track. I'm going to turn off that drum kit and I'm just going to go to my sample banks right here, right? And then I'm going to grab a kick drum that I like. Let's see. Those are all pretty big. I think we want just a retro. So something like this. Then I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to Command D, duplicate that. And then I'm going to grab all of it, duplicate it. I already know I'm going to want this auto filter on, but let's just hear it without. And it's down here at -10 volume. If I put it up to 0, it's really loud. So maybe I'll take it down to like 3, 5. And then let's put the auto filter. There you go. Now it's a different kick drum. This is the Ableton one. This is your custom kit kick drum. Obviously that has a lot more power and punch to it, but you know, turn it off, go back to the 505, use your audio effects, maybe put a limiter on this thing. Where is a limiter? Boom. And let's crank it. Well, let's turn on the track first, right? Yellow. Okay. We're singing over. We're singing over this. Honestly, the limiter might not be what we need. We might need a saturator. We're singing over this. That's okay. I can grab both of these by shift, clicking both, hit Command G to group it, and then maybe I want to put all these before the auto filter. We're singing over this. And then here's your other kick drum. Oh, funny. They're pretty similar at the end of the day. So you can do a lot. You just basically have to build everything yourself, which is the best way to do it in my opinion. You can also do EQs and stuff. I think we'll go into that in another video. Your EQ8, so instead of the auto filter, you could basically do the same thing here. Or maybe you want something different. Maybe you want this. We're singing over this. To do like a little transition before it drops back in. So you can interchange this for this. You can use all sorts of different things to get what you want. You can put reverb on your kick. We're singing over this. A little ridiculous. Maybe you don't want to do that. But anyways, yeah, we went over quite a bit. So let's cut this for right now. Honestly, there's probably guys out there and girls that do a better presentation at all of this, but you know, a lot of people ask me particularly for advice on things because I've been in the industry, this, that, and the other. I think that those other people, you should go check them out on YouTube. They're awesome, and however they broadcast and sort this out is usually really, really good. But if you really just want to dive in and stick with one person and not be bombarded by all these different advertisements, searching through videos, and you want to stick with me to kind of learn on your journey, I'm definitely hitting all the points that I use daily. So if there's anything specific, put in the comments that you want to learn. I'll try to touch it, or you can DM me. I'm small compared to these other guys when it comes to YouTube content, so it's easy for me to reply. But yeah, hopefully this helps you guys, and have a good one. Let's see.